Abigail Posner has spent her life catalyzing change and creating impact. Leveraging her background in anthropology, Abigail has spent years working in creative fields, shining a unique and humanistic lens on brand building, business, culture, and technology. She currently helps make sense of human beings' deep emotional relationship to the digital space and converts those insights in strategic and creative efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Abigail Posner.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, I love this responsive audience. Okay, I'm going to use this. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm truly honored to be at this conference. And also, I should say thank you for coming in early this morning to see me. I know you guys partied hard last night. I heard it was an awesome party. So thank you for waking up and showing up. I really appreciate it. Oh, one more thing I should say. I do love getting feedback, learning from my presentations. So feel free, I won't be offended if you take out your phone. Feel free to tweet your thoughts to A. Posner or at BeautySkew, which is my other Twitter handle. That's my blog. Anything that comes to mind. The good, the bad, the ugly, if you just like my shoes, whatever. Okay. And you're laughing too. Oh, thank you. Okay, good. You're warmed up. Excellent. But in all seriousness, I totally understand why you wanted to hear about creativity this morning. I mean, after all, from what I'm hearing from some of the speeches in this conference and some of the conversations that I've had with a few of you, you're in an industry that's going through some change. And for some of you, that could be exciting. And for others, it can be kind of daunting. And if you're like a number of industries that I work with, and I work with a lot, you're probably asking yourself some deep and critical questions about how to deal with this change. Maybe it's questions like, how do I grow with everything that's happening? How will technology change my offering? What should the accounting service become? What should it look like, smell like, taste like? Should we be tapping or hiring totally different talent? And if so, how? And I'm sure there are many more questions. And in order to answer these questions, in order to come up with the solutions to face these challenges, you have to come up with ideas. You have to be creative. Easy peasy, right? Now I'm going to do a little experiment. Luckily the lights are bright. I want you to raise your hand high if you would call yourself a creative person. Not bad, not bad. Okay. But not everybody. I wish it were more, but I get you. I understand. Because I had this very same feeling about myself. And it was around this time last year, I was in the south of France, I was in Cannes, for the annual Cannes Lion Festival, which is the big advertising festival of the year. It's kind of like, you know, the film festival, just not as glamorous, but just as fun. And so all the bigwigs come to this festival. And it was also around the same time that I had been thinking about all these ideas around creativity. And so as soon as I stepped onto the Croisette, which is the boardwalk around the Mediterranean, I felt totally and utterly intimidated. Because here I was, surrounded by all these creative types, you know, with the tats and the cool hair and the dark glasses, you know. And I was like, wait a minute. Who am I? How can I call myself a creative person? I'm a strategist. And I felt totally demoralized. But then it dawned on me, on the plane ride back from Cannes, no less. I'm actually going to be there in a few days. On the plane ride back last year from Cannes, I realized that what I learned from all the various aspects of my crazy life, as a student of anthropology, as a brand strategist in advertising, as someone who works in a pretty big tech company, next to the most creative people I know, engineers. Seriously, and I'll show you how. As a lover and commentator on all things beauty in my blog, Beauty Skew, and as a mother and a spiritual person and an author, what I've realized is that we are all inherently creative. In fact, being creative is what separates us from other species. It's what defines us as human beings. It's about coming up with ideas and solutions. We don't always realize we have the tools inside of us or how to harness them. So today won't be about acquiring a new skill or adopting a new model that you'll probably forget anyway in order to be creative. Instead, it'll be about bringing to life a quote that has resonated with me throughout my career by Marcel Proust. The voyage of discovery is not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Today will be about pausing to honor the fact that as innately creative people, we are doing things in our daily lives, often at an unconscious level, that are the foundations of creativity. And if we could just tap those behaviors or skills, recognize we have them, and bring them to a conscious level, then we can be more intentionally creative in all aspects of our lives, even our business ones. And I'm going to show you how we all do this in small and big ways. And we've been doing this since the dawn of time, right? Whether that's discovering fire, or coming up with the best ways to shoot a bow and arrow, or figuring out how to best soothe our kids, or coming up with an application on our phone so that we're never lost. Humankind has been accessing and harnessing this hardwired sense of creativity throughout history. And it's only by you tapping your innate creativity that you're going to get to these solutions to these critical questions. Okay, so how do we tap this innate creativity? Let's begin. Legendary ad man and founder of DDB, where I cut my teeth in advertising, said, "At the heart of an effective creative philosophy is the belief that nothing is so powerful as an insight into human nature. What compulsions drive a man, or a woman," please forgive him, he wrote this during the Mad Men era. Oh, by the way, note to self, Don Draper for Mad Men, mirrored from him, right? That he's basically Bill Bernbach. Anyway, back to the quote. What compulsions drive a man, what instincts dominate his action, even though his language so often camouflages what really motivates him. What he is saying is that what underlies all great creative thinking is an understanding of the why people do what they do. Not just looking at what they do, but why. What motivates them, what drives them, what they aspire towards or to. Now, often it's a hidden truth, hence the word insight. But once we reveal that truth, once we understand what's driving people, what's motivating people, once we get to the answer to the why, then we know what should be created. Let me tell you, at the Googs, where I work, right, at Google, no invention, no innovation doesn't start with a why. I'll give you an example, self-driving cars. You think people just woke up one day and said, let's make a self-driving car? No. What happened was these engineers were looking at a stark number of how many people are dying because of car accidents. And they're asking themselves why. And then they dug a little bit deeper. And they said, what is it about our driving? Why are we allowing ourselves to get into these accidents? And what is it about the way cars are manufactured and at work? Why are they allowing us to die? And the answers to those whys sparked totally new ideas. And now they're on the train has left the station. Hashtag seek the why. I've been drawn to the quest for the why since my early days in college when I studied social anthropology. And I basically had to understand why people do what they do, why they eat what they eat, or wear what they wear, or trade what they trade. I actually was focused on something called economic anthropology, which was so cool. And then in advertising, I had to understand, as a strategic planner, I had to understand why people buy what they buy. Everything from a Cheeto to insurance. And the answers to these whys, the insights into human behavior, served as foundations for so many new product, brand, and communication ideas. And now I get to do the same thing in the digital space. I get to understand why people do what they do there, why they watch the crazy videos they watch, or search for what they search for, or spend so much darn time in social media. And next week I'm launching a totally new narrative on why people do what they do in virtual reality. So cool, but conversation for another day. Oh, I have a great story to tell you. It's from my early days in advertising, all about seeking the why. But I have to warn you, it's about a category as far away from accounting as you can imagine. You ready? Incontinence. Yes. They always give that stuff to the rookie. Either you get like sanitary protection or toilet paper or incontinence. I got the incontinence. But I took it on with gusto. It's big business. So I had a client that was manufacturing these kind of thin sanitary napkin type things for light incontinence. And so the first thing I did was I looked at all the advertising in the category. So the advertising of my competition, the advertising of my client, just to see what was going on, what were they saying, who they were appealing to. And what I noticed was that the advertising fell into two camps. One camp preyed on the shame and embarrassment of this condition. You'd have somebody whispering to you, oh, you have a problem, we have a solution, right? That made you feel really good. And then you had this other camp of advertising that basically borrowed from the codes and cues of pharma advertising. Those saccharine images, these like vignettes. Everyone seems to be smiling and doing these things, and they would wear the white pants, which is like the stress test, because if you have an accident, it shows, And so, needless to say, the ads were not working, including my clients. And we had to understand why. And we had to really understand the why of our customer, what makes them tick, what motivates them, so we would know how to be relevant to them. And so when we started digging in, trying to figure out who these women were, what made them tick, what we soon realized was these women, they weren't embarrassed or ashamed by their condition. No, they were sassy and cool, and they just wanted to get on with their lives and be as sexy and energetic and fun-loving as possible. With this insight, with this understanding of the why, we were able to create a totally new idea for the category. One that borrowed from the codes and cues of fashion and beauty, not pharma. So the tagline was, designed to fit your style. Nobody was talking at you. There was just great lines of words on the screen, and then you had this woman. She was probably 40-ish, Caucasian, slim, and she was dancing around in her purple lingerie. And the idea was that this pad was so thin that it fits into the sexy lingerie that you wear every day, maybe. Okay, you want to assume, right? Anyway, I knew we scored when we were in focus groups, and we had to test the advertising to make sure that it was going to work. And sitting next to me was an African-American woman, heavy set, about 65 years old, and I'll never forget, she had these purple leather pants, right? And as soon as the ad was shown, she stood up and she pointed to it exuberantly and said, yes, yes, that's me, that's me. Now, obviously, the model didn't look like her, right? But resembled how she felt inside. We just had to dig deep and understand why. Now, if you think about it, we all do this, right? We don't take things at face value. We ask why. All of you, I'm sure, have had babies or grandchildren, or you have nieces and nephews. When your babies are crying, do you stop and look at them and go, they are crying, therefore they are sad, full stop? No! You try to understand why they're crying, right? Are they sick? Are they hungry? Do they need their diaper changed? Without this innate sensibility to seek the why, our species would not survive. So the next time you're back at the ranch, and you're thinking about, how can I motivate a new client to work with me? Or how do I get someone to change their behavior in the organization? Maybe adopt a new technology. Or how do I appeal to maybe a new type of employee? Don't just talk about yourself, think about what you're doing, or even think about what you want them to do. Think about why they would find what you have to offer appealing. Who are they? What makes them tick? What do they aspire to? I guarantee you, once you get to that insight about them and their human behavior, you will have a springboard for so many new ideas. Okay. So now you have your insights about human behavior. We said that's the bedrock of creativity, right? How do you go about coming up with the actual idea that leverages that insight? Hashtag, look for the links. Here's a news flash. Ideas don't come from nowhere. There's no eureka moment. There's no, flashbulb moment. Rather, they happen when we brilliantly see, and we all do this, when we brilliantly see the connection among seemingly disparate, disconnected, unrelated notions or concepts that when brought together, reveal something novel. Author Stephen Johnson, when he talks about how inventors come up with ideas, he calls it the adjacent possibilities. They see something over here and they see something over there not too far away, and they make a connection just that no one else has. Now, I know there are products and services you use that have totally played this notion to the nth degree. Like Uber or Lyft. Maybe you took one from the airport. You know what Uber is? It's basically a taxi service meets online meal reservation systems. Boom. Totally different worlds. Or how about, apropos to Vegas and the 100-degree weather we're going to have today, spray sunscreen. You know what that is? Creamy sunscreen meets Pam cooking spray. Totally different worlds coming together. You see, if you try to bring things together within the same world, it ain't going to be new. It's just going to be an iteration. You got to go beyond. Or fantasy football, my son's favorite. What is that? It's football meets online gambling. Boom. Or for the fashionistas in the room, Rent the Runway. It's haute couture shopping meets Netflix. That's what it is. Two totally different worlds coming together. And guess what? We are hardwired to want to do this. But it means we have to be open to lots of stimuli, lots of concepts, lots of worlds that we may filter out, and be willing to make connections that may seem bizarre at first. But it's these connections that bring forth something new and novel. That is new. New and powerful, actually, and novel. Now, here's an example from my world, the digital space. Hold on to your seats.
One more dawn, one more day, one day. 2, 4, 6.
Okay. You're probably looking at me going, this lady is redonkulous. 1, how is that a good idea? 2, how does that have anything to do with accounting? Okay, let me explain. So remember what I said before. Ideas arise when we look for the links, when we make connections. Now at the level of neuroscience, this happens when synapses fire up in our brains. Those are the connections between the neurons. But here's where it gets super, super interesting. Because neuroscience tells us that the more we're exposed to unrelated, disconnected, random stimuli, the more connections our brains will make. Because you see, our brains seek to make connections, we dig it. Leonardo da Vinci discovered this centuries ago. He said the human brain cannot fathom a series of unrelated objects, items, images, without our brains trying to connect them. He called it the law of continuity. We cannot not make connections, but they are hard to do when we have our adult filters on. You see, kids don't have this problem. Well, let's face it, most kids don't have a lot of filters, and I should know because I live with 3 of them. But this no filters is a beautiful thing. Because you see, they haven't learned to filter out their ideas. They don't know if they're smart or stupid or make sense. They just let them flow. They let them flow and they build upon them. What's more is they haven't learned to filter out all the stimuli that we have. So they're exposed to that much more stimuli, make that many more connections, and come up with so many more ideas. Here's an example from my life. I live in Manhattan. And as you probably know, if you've been to Manhattan, the best form of transportation are your legs, right? If you want to go to point A to point B. So when my kids were younger, now they're too cool for school. They go everywhere on their own. But when they were younger, we used to walk everywhere. Walk to the supermarket, walk to the library, whatever. And so when we were walking, I had pretty much filtered out all the sights and sounds and smells of New York. And so I just basically focus on not stepping on dog poop, right, and the light. Now my kids had learned to filter all that out. So not only were they not stepping on dog poop out of fear of death from their mother, right, but they also noticed the posters on the walls, or on the fences, and the fire engines screaming by, and the horns honking, and the bee buzzing. And so all of that stimuli led them to make so many more connections, and all of a sudden their conversations would go into these amazing, amazing places. And the final thing about kids, why they're so good at coming up with ideas, is they're not bound by the rules of order and logic like we are. So anything goes together. Anything. Doesn't sound weird. Anything. But there's got to be a connection. I mean, nothing insightful or clever or funny just happens at random. There's got to be something that connects them. Let me give you a hypothetical example. Let's say I own a candy company, which is kind of my fantasy. And, I got to come up with new candy ideas to put on the shelves. So, I want to ideate, and in the spirit of looking for the links, I take something within my portfolio, one of the candies, and I try to link it, try to connect it with something totally random. Maybe it's a new trend in culture, or maybe it's a household item, to see if I can find a link and see what happens. So I take something from my portfolio. Let's say it's gum. Okay? And then I take something totally random. I don't know, a pillow. See if I can find a link. Gum, pillow.
Abigail Posner has spent her life catalyzing change and creating impact. Leveraging her background in anthropology, Abigail has spent years working in creative fields, shining a unique and humanistic lens on brand building, business, culture, and technology. She currently helps make sense of human beings' deep emotional relationship to the digital space and converts those insights in strategic and creative efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Abigail Posner.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, I love this responsive audience. Okay, I'm going to use this. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm truly honored to be at this conference. And also, I should say thank you for coming in early this morning to see me. I know you guys partied hard last night. I heard it was an awesome party. So thank you for waking up and showing up. I really appreciate it. Oh, one more thing I should say. I do love getting feedback, learning from my presentations. So feel free, I won't be offended if you take out your phone. Feel free to tweet your thoughts to A. Posner or at BeautySkew, which is my other Twitter handle. That's my blog. Anything that comes to mind. The good, the bad, the ugly, if you just like my shoes, whatever. Okay. And you're laughing too. Oh, thank you. Okay, good. You're warmed up. Excellent. But in all seriousness, I totally understand why you wanted to hear about creativity this morning. I mean, after all, from what I'm hearing from some of the speeches in this conference and some of the conversations that I've had with a few of you, you're in an industry that's going through some change. And for some of you, that could be exciting. And for others, it can be kind of daunting. And if you're like a number of industries that I work with, and I work with a lot, you're probably asking yourselves some deep and critical questions about how to deal with this change. Maybe it's questions like, how do I grow? with everything that's happening? How will technology change my offering? What should the accounting service become? What should it look like, smell like, taste like? Should we be tapping or hiring totally different talent? And if so, how? And I'm sure there are many more questions. And in order to answer these questions, in order to come up with the solutions to face these challenges, you have to come up with ideas. You have to be creative. Easy peasy, right? Now I'm going to do a little experiment. Luckily the lights are bright. I want you to raise your hand high if you would call yourself a creative person. Not bad, not bad. Okay. But not everybody. I wish it were more, but I get you. I understand. Because I had this very same feeling about myself. And it was around this time last year, I was in the south of France, I was in Cannes, for the annual Cannes Lion Festival, which is the big advertising festival of the year. It's kind of like, you know, the film festival, just not as glamorous, but just as fun. And so all the bigwigs come to this festival. And it was also around the same time that I had been thinking about all these ideas around creativity. And so as soon as I stepped onto the Croisette, which is the boardwalk around the Mediterranean, I felt totally and utterly intimidated. Because here I was, surrounded by all these creative types, you know, with the tats and the cool hair and the dark glasses, you know. And I was like, wait a minute. Who am I? How can I call myself a creative person? I'm a strategist. And I felt totally demoralized. But then it dawned on me, on the plane ride back from Cannes, no less. I'm actually going to be there in a few days. On the plane ride back last year from Cannes, I realized that what I learned from all the various aspects of my crazy life, as a student of anthropology, as a brand strategist in advertising, as someone who works in a pretty big tech company, next to the most creative people I know, engineers. Seriously, and I'll show you how. As a lover and never would you have seen that before. Now, how did that come about? So at the time, they were launching this new look, athleisure wear, you know, kind of like real clothes, so to speak, street clothes. And they wanted to push that idea forward. And they realized they had to step out of their world in order to get some good ideas. And so they thought about this, like, okay, well what do fancy people do that's kind of real? Well, let's think. Oh wait, they still go food shopping sometimes. There you go. Now that idea was so good that inspired so many more ideas. They created all these faux items to put on the shelves that paid homage to the brand's heritage, like cocoa flakes, get it? Or they took elements of the supermarket and turned them into accessories, and even color matched the clothes on the runway to the food items on the shelves. Now, if you think about it, you probably look for the links, mix and match, and other aspects of your life. You may not even realize it. Like you probably do with food. If anyone here likes to cook, I'm sure you find spices or cuisines that are maybe different, but you can actually find a connection and make something really interesting with it. Called fusion food, right? Or maybe you do this with clothes. You have a tie that you bought with some outfit, but there's something in it, there's a color, there's a theme that somehow links to another shirt that you have. And boom, you put it together and you have a whole new outfit. Or maybe you do this with words. My buddy Tom, when he was growing up, his mother would come up with these totally new but effective phrases. Like she had this phrase for all the dangerous items in the house, like scissors and hot irons and knives. She called them baby killers, right? 2 words you would not want to put together, but it worked. I would stay away from a baby killer. I don't know about you. Now, at this point you may be saying, this is kind of fun. I can see going into an ideation session with, you know, armed with elements of my current business, maybe insights I have about my client that I'm trying to appeal to, and maybe the new technologies I'm adopting, and some of the the special sauce that we have, you know, our special signature services, and then mixing it with something totally random. It could be kind of fun. But it also seems kind of daunting. You know, I mean, how many permutations of these can you do? You could do this for years. I get it. Follow me for a second. A little insight into me. I wonder if this ever happens to you. I get this weird thrill. I mean, it's like a Sunday afternoon, and I have to come up with a meal idea for the kids, my husband, and there's very few things in the pantry or the fridge. Now, normally you'd expect me to panic, right? But the constraints I have in front of me force me to put together food items I normally wouldn't and come up with totally new meal ideas. That's your answer. Seek constraints. Time constraints and variable constraints. Engineers at Google live by constraints. We love them. Now, what does that mean? Do not spend a lot of time ideating. You will overanalyze your ideas and you will kill them. I've been there. Now, I'm not saying don't bake in time after the fact for feedback and iteration, but as you're ideating, spend 20 minutes ideating an idea and move on to another iteration session where you ideate for 20 minutes, and then you move on. Now, what's different among all those iteration sessions is your variables. And here's where you have the constraints around variables. You're probably tempted to throw the whole kitchen sink of everything you got into a brainstorm. Do not do that. In your first iteration, just put in maybe one type of client you're trying to appeal to, let's say. And then maybe one insight about them. And don't try to throw all your services in. Put, your one key service, and then connect it with items or topics or trends that are totally unrelated. Bring them together and see what happens. Spend 20 minutes, move on, and then change the variables. Still few of them though, right? Maybe you keep those disconnected items and objects and seemingly disconnected or trends, and then bring another service into the mix and take out the first one and bring a different insight into the mix. You get the idea. Whichever idea gets the most energy, you go back and ideate more on that. I do this with my clients a lot and it works. You just have to force those constraints. Now here's one more element to leverage to ensure that you have a successful ideation session. But here's a case where less isn't more, and that's collaboration. The more you can ideate and be creative with others, the more creative you will be. Remember that Cannes festival I was telling you about? Well, there was a great presentation done by these two companies where they analyzed all the winning Cannes line, the Grand Prix ads of the past 30 years, looking at the data to see if there was any commonalities. And one of the insights that rose to the surface was that winning teams had 26% more people credited. On the list of people who worked on that campaign, there were more. So now, this kind of defies logic, right? You think too many cooks in the kitchen would diminish creativity. No, the more people involved in the development of the campaign, the more likely it would win. And the research went on to also show that the more diverse the disciplines listed, the more likely it would win. Now, at Google, where I work, collaboration is a no-brainer. We're actually judged on it, our performance review. It's part of our performance review. And you probably hear that we have these big cafeterias, I don't know if you've heard that, and these micro kitchens, which are anything but micro, they could probably feed an army, right? The point of them is, yes, to help us, stay working hard and well-fed, but really, it's so that we have large enough space to come together and ideate. I urge you, do not try to be creative on your own. It is very, very hard. Play together. Now, I'm sure you do this instinctively, actually, in your daily life. Like, let's say you have to come up with a totally new type of, anniversary bash idea. Or you have to come up with an idea for a gift to give to someone who has everything. Now, you may open up your computer and start roaming around to come up with ideas, but I bet you pick up the phone and you call somebody, or you stop at the water cooler and ask your buddies at work. The same should be true for your work life. So the next time, you have to brainstorm and come up with a new idea. Collect some colleagues, especially colleagues with different points of view than you. Bring your insights to the mix. Bring your services and maybe new technologies to the mix. And then, of course, go beyond your world and pick items or trends or notions that seem totally disconnected and bring them together and see what happens. Look for the links. Embrace your inner crazy and do the stuff that kids do all the time. No rules, playing together, and openness to everything. Your brains will interpret these links in such a way that will bring forth new ideas for your business. I guarantee you. Now, up until now, I've given you some critical keys in order to be creative, right? Seek the why, look for the links, use those constraints and collaborate. But there's one more element you need to bring to the brainstorm. But I warn you, you gotta go deep here. You gotta go spiritual. You gotta believe in something greater than yourselves. You gotta discover your mission. Now, words like mission have become kind of jargony in the business world, right? We have a mission to sell more widgets. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about finding your meaning, your purpose on this earth, and how you're gonna make people's lives better. And for your businesses or brands, that means discovering that business, that purpose, that meaning for your company. Now, some of the best brands, most powerful brands, are brands that have a mission, have a purpose. Like Dove. Dove doesn't just want to sell soap. It seeks to raise our self-esteem with a campaign for real beauty. It's all about loving who you are, what you look like. Doesn't matter what your skin color, doesn't matter your size, doesn't matter your age. Apple doesn't just want to hawk the next computer. It embraces creativity. Think different. That was their campaign. Or Philips doesn't want to just sell the next new gadget. It seeks to make technology simple for everyone. Now, what does all this spirituality have to do with creativity? So I learned years ago, and I actually wrote about this, when working closely with my clients on how to create their missions beyond just selling products and services, that once they found their missions, not only were they able to attract more customers, but they were able to galvanize their teams and be more creative as a result. It sparked creativity. And that's what happened to these brands. Like Dove. Dove came out with something called pro-age line as opposed to anti-age line. How could they have an anti-age line if they're all about embracing who you are, right? Or Philips, or let me talk about Apple actually, my competition. Apple, once they had the think different idea, they came out with a whole iSeries, the iPod, the iPhone, you get it. Now, it's always been religions and spiritual systems that have fueled creativity and inspiration and artistic expression throughout history. One of the best examples of that, the Bible, or the Notre Dame, or the Eiffel Tower. They were all driven by some sense of a mission. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, sister, it's a little woo-woo for me. Right? I'm an accountant. I deal with numbers and hard facts. But hang on there, because I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality, and I'm sure as human beings, you have a mission. Like, why do you work hard? Is it just to, feed your kids and pay the mortgage? No. You probably do it also for a greater mission, to serve as role models for your kids so that they turn into responsible, caring adults. And with this mission in mind, you don't mind staying up late and coming up with great ideas for their after-school activities or great family vacations. So the next time you're back at the ranch and you're thinking about, what do we truly offer? What is our service? Don't just think about what you're doing at a functional level. Maybe it's great audits or very strong strategic consulting. But think about what it means on a totally other plane. What is your purpose? What is your mission? I mean, it could be that these great audits or this great consulting actually helps your clients feel secure and armed to go out and chart new business territories. That's a mission. Whatever it is, go beyond and then bring that mission to the mix when you ideate for new product ideas or new solutions or new services. Now, perhaps no one did this as well as John F. Kennedy. When he asked the American public to be more creative than ever before and put a man on the moon. I mean, do you realize what this required? We had to create a form of transportation that was going to fly 240,000 miles from Earth at speeds of 25,000 miles per hour and at temperatures of half that of the sun. And oh yeah, by the way, using metal alloys that had yet to be developed. But what did he do? He tapped our core. He tapped our sense of purpose and mission. And I'm going to show you just a few seconds of a much larger speech that he gave at Rice University.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. Thank you.
He tapped our sense of purpose. And were we more creative than ever before? Hell yeah. Now let's fast forward to last summer. And I'm on my first alone vacation with my husband since our honeymoon, because all the kids were at overnight camp, which is going to happen again soon. And so we're on a plane, and you know that luxury of like you can't use your phone, so you have a paper newspaper. And it's like USA Today or something. And he opens it up, and he points to this article, and I'm blown away. Ozone hole over Antarctica beginning to heal. After years of hearing that the ozone layer was eroding and that Earth was slowly being destroyed, mankind came together, collaboration, a funny mix, looking for the links, of scientists, politicians, and business people, tapping different sources, right? Different worlds, to come up with an idea to fix it. And by the way, were they motivated by a mission? And it's working. What a great example of creativity. There is no question that in these changing times, creativity isn't just fun and games. Right? It's not arts and crafts. It's about coming up with ideas and solutions. It's a business imperative. But it's more than just that. It's a human one. Because as this ozone layer story shows, it's creativity that's going to help us change the world. We're all business people, but we're also human beings with families and communities who depend on us, and it's creativity that's going to help us make the world a better place. And whether that's solving for the big stuff, like curing cancer, which my father's been trying to do for 40 years, or maybe stopping violence against women, or maybe it's solving for the seemingly small stuff, like making one's day feel that much more meaningful. All of it requires creativity. And now you have the tools to tap your innate creativity. Right? Seek the why. Try to understand what's motivating people. Look for the links. Make connections. Don't just stay within your world. Go beyond your world. I mean, of course, have the constraints you need so it doesn't go crazy. And collaborate. And finally, discover what you really stand for and bring that to the mix. Now, I know I've thrown a lot at you. But even if you just remember one, you know, maybe your colleague will remember another, and another colleague will remember another, and so you'll have all these ideas. Each and every one of you has the innate ability to come up with ideas to make your everyday lives more interesting and exciting, your business lives more productive and successful, and your worlds more beautiful and amazing. So in these changing times, I challenge each and every one of you, what are you going to do to harness it? Thank you.
Abigail, that was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have time for just a few questions running on our clock, and maybe we could start with your tool of collaboration.
Sure.
And as you know, firms or organizations get a group of people together, inevitably there'll be one or two people in the group are kind of sticks in the mud, described as the grumpy old guy in the question.
Yeah.
What are some techniques for overcoming a person's negativity or someone who refuses to get on board with the group?
Right. Usually, I love those guys. And I make them the leaders. And I get them to help facilitate the whole process. So they feel ownership. They're not just feeling like this is dumped upon them, but they actually have to be involved. So bring them in early to the process. Make them feel like they're owning it, and they're owning it, so that they then become excited about it.
So don't kick them out of the group.
Not only don't kick them out of the group, bring them in early. Make them fall in love with the process.
No early retirement. No. So let's go to another one. Would you say, and there's a mix in this, I'm sure, but creativity a born innate trait, or is it a learned skill?
It's an innate trait that you have to make sure you polish, like everything. We're all born with a sense of intelligence, but we still have to go to school. So what I'm urging all of us to believe is that we all can do this, and we all do this. It's just we have to be more aware of it.
So you can bring out what you have.
You can bring it out, and there are techniques and tools, and I use them for myself and my colleagues to make sure that we can be as creative as possible.
Right. How about, I think this is a good question, what are some strategies to maintain your competitive edge? What this person said is, I'm more creative at certain times of the day, for instance. So how do I always be as creative as I can be?
Yes. I think there are different types of people. There are morning people and there are night people. So you have to judge when is the best time of day for you. But what I always find, and I do this, I force this upon my clients, get out of the space you're in. So no matter what time of day, do not try to work in your office. Try to go to a separate place. We often either leave their offices, my clients' offices, bring them to Google, or sometimes we go to a totally different environment, which helps them open their minds and not filter out, as we said before, that they're open to everything.
So a little deeper question. Have you considered the tax savings possible by moving out of Manhattan?
Yes, I have.
I thought you're aware.
Oh my gosh, believe me. I have to put 3 kids in college. Yes. But I love Manhattan, and I love the creativity that it actually sparks in me. So it's hard for me to leave.
Well, this is a follow-up question similar because I don't know if it's a political question or which hand you write with. Are you a lefty?
No, I'm a righty. But I'll tell you something. There is a known phenomenon of people who don't remember their left from their right, and that's me. Like, don't ever ask me to take my left out and screw up. So, but I am do you have that too? Who says that? Yeah. Yeah, all right, okay. You're really creative then. I'm just telling you, you are. I don't know if that's true, but I think it's true. At least you're really smart. Yeah, woo.
So who's the most creative person you've ever met, and why would you say that's
my
question?
Gosh. Oy. Who asked that question? That really stumped me. That is a good question.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I'll help stir your crowd. We'll collaborate. We had the guy from Shark Tank. Mr. Wonderful. We asked him who his favorite shark was, and he said himself.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. It depends on the day. Maybe my daughter created this dinosaur. It was a magician dinosaur. It was like, whoever thought of that? But it worked. So today she's the most creative person, but tomorrow there'll be somebody else.
Right, but you talked about that before children, and do you feel, I think this is apropos for the group, that there's a certain amount of magic in not being bogged down with what can't be done, right?
Absolutely, because as I said before, it's all about filtering. You don't realize, we do this, it's a survival instinct, right? We have to start filtering out all the stimuli that comes at us, otherwise we'll go bananas, right? But the problem is, when we do that, we filter out important stuff. We filter out elements that could come into the mix if we actually just saw it. Whoever came up with that spray sunscreen, why would they ever have thought of the kitchen and Pam cooking spray? But somehow that person did. So it's, when we ask ourselves, how can we train ourselves to be creative? That's key, is just try to be open to as many people and ideas and spaces and places and elements that you can. Read everything, not just about accounting. Like when I hire people, I want to make sure they are not knee-deep in either tech or brands or advertising. I want to know that they have interests outside so that they can bring that to bear.
Mm-hmm. And so, people are actually living every day and running a business, mostly smaller businesses. And how would you recommend, how do they manage the balance between everyday incremental creativity and mini innovation versus going after those bigger ideas, those game changers? They need to set time aside.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about ideating. I don't think most people here probably ideate a lot.
Yeah, well, I think we all ideate every day. We don't even realize it, number one. Okay, so I think you can take some of these techniques and try to do it on a fast-paced way. But I do think you have to be choiceful, right? You can't always change your day up for everything that you want to be thinking about and finding a solution for. So I think choose your battles. If there is a big hunkin' idea that you need to solve for, challenge, that's when you bring in the troops, and that's when you bring in all the techniques, and that's when you work with outside folks, facilitators, others who can help you do this really well. But you can borrow from all these techniques every day, as I mentioned, we do anyway, whether we're cooking or coming up with new phrases or whatever. We tend to actually leverage these techniques more freely when we're not thinking about, we got to solve for a big idea.
Right. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great. Really
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.